It's that time. It's Monday, and it's time for the first 49ers 53-man roster projection of the year. We'll be doing these over the next 4 months, but the first one is always special, right? Because we finally have enough players to make a proper roster projection. So there it is on your screen. It came out on The Athletic this morning. 49ers have 89 out of 90 offseason roster spots filled. About 4 months from now, they're going to have to cut down to 53, from 89 to 53. That's going to be a tough cut. Obviously, they also have the practice squad at their disposal, so they're going to be able to keep a lot of these players in the building. But as far as making that game day roster, there's going to be trade-offs to make for the 49ers, and that's a good thing for any football team. It means that your roster is deep at the margins. When you have difficult decisions at essentially every single position group, well, that means that you've insulated yourself, as opposed to the 49ers of 2017 and 2018. Those weren't very deep teams. By 2019, it was a deep football team. Lynch and Shanahan have built this up now to the point where it seems that it's going to be deep year in and year out because they maintain that veteran core. And then if they draft decently enough, that rookie core of each draft becomes a veteran core, at least part of it, a little bit later on. And then the cycle continues. So anyway, hop into the chat section, take a look at this link, and subscribe to The Athletic. That will give you access to the article that's on your screen, the 53-man roster projection with analysis at every single position. I'm going to go through the spreadsheet that I have open on Google Sheets, which you can also follow along on, and that is right here. So the second link that I'm sharing is the spreadsheet that's open to everybody. But seriously, subscribe to The Athletic. I think you could still get it for $1 a month or something that I think is really worth the price. And everybody that signs up through the YouTube channel goes out and checks out The Athletic. They seem to say the same thing. They're happy with the coverage they're getting of the 49ers. We're trying to be as fair and deep as possible. Man, these sirens always are really, really loud whenever I do the show from here in Redwood City. So we'll let that guy pass. Hopefully everything's okay. And we will begin with our 49ers 53-man roster breakdown, position by position, before I go out to lunch here on this beautiful Monday in the Bay Area. All right, so first position group. Let's start with the quarterbacks. As you can tell, I've color-coded this sucker for us. Yellow means that the 49ers re-signed a particular player this offseason. That's going to be a veteran. Blue is a recent rookie addition. The 49ers added 22 rookies over the past weekend, 9 draftees plus 13 undrafted free agents. There's a lot of blue on there, and there's also obviously a lot of yellow. It's been an active offseason for the 49ers, but they have managed to re-up a lot of players, as yellow also signifies re-signings, not just standard signings. So left side of the bold line on this sheet is the 53-man roster projection. Right side is the 90-man roster, the guys who didn't make the cut, and there's certain notes like Jimmy Garoppolo, trade expected, D Ford, retirement or release expected. But guys on the right side of the line could still make the practice squad, which is significant because the practice squad is larger than it had been in years prior 2020, and the practice squad is also essentially a taxi squad. It's a farm system and a taxi squad. It's a developmental kind of thing, but it can also be something where you call up a player for a particular game, and you might really need that player, especially if it's at a critical position. So we'll start with the quarterbacks for the 49ers. That's going to be the first row up here. Simple enough to me. My projected 53-man roster involved Trey Lance as QB1 and Nate Sudfeld as QB2. We could follow the money for clues just like we did last year. The money indicated that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be QB1. Well, this season, Jimmy Garoppolo has no guaranteed money unless he makes the 53-man roster. So the 49ers have until September to trade him without any real financial penalty. And there comes a point that, even if you do like to have an extremely deep and insulated quarterback room, the modern NFL dictates that it's going to be hard to keep that forever due to the salary cap. And eventually that bill is going to come due. And eventually you're going to have to make a choice between one quarterback or another, just because one quarterback is probably commanding too high of a salary to make sense within the context of the rest of your roster. And that choice for the 49ers will likely come in September because Jimmy Garoppolo's money is not guaranteed right now. it really costs them nothing to carry him during the offseason as long as they can make the appropriate restructures elsewhere, which don't even hurt them because the cap is going to explode, presumably, with the new TV deals coming in 2023 and beyond. But it will start costing them something once he potentially makes the 53-man roster, because as a vested veteran, Jimmy Garoppolo's $24.2 million base salary for the 2022 season would become guaranteed for the entire campaign if he made the 53-man roster. And in that case, the 49ers would not be able to carry his resulting open cap space over into 2023. So if they, trade or release him or whatever, before it's guaranteed here in 2022, $24.2 million opens up. If the 49ers don't use it in 2022 or whatever portion of that they don't use this season, that would carry over salary cap space wise into 2023. So I think they're about to hit that fork in the road to Garoppolo. That's why they're openly shopping him on the trade market. That's why they're waiting for the shoulder to heal, and we'll see how that situation progresses. But if you take a look at the sheet up there, you could, I think, very clearly see that it's cut out for Lance to be QB1, Sudfeld, who has $2 million guaranteed. That's QB2 money to be QB2. And then Sudfeld, who was the practice squad quarterback last year, his spot will be replaced by Brock Purdy, 7th-round pick, Mr. Irrelevant in the context of the draft, Mr. Relevant in the 49ers' hearts. Purdy, I think, fits really nicely or projects really nicely into that QB3 role on the practice squad for the 49ers. And it just makes too much sense. Lance, Sudfeld, Purdy, 49ers hope to recoup some draft capital from Jimmy Garoppolo. At the very least, they can recoup $24.2 million of salary cap space moving forward. Now, there are questions about Jimmy Garoppolo's potential return in 2022. A lot of people ask me, I get that it's unlikely, but is it possible? And yes, anything is possible. This is the National Football League. We should always avoid dealing in absolutes. So we talk about gradients of likelihood, and the likelihood of Jimmy Garoppolo being gone are very high. But of course, it's possible that he's on the roster in 2022. Say that Trey Lance gets hurt this offseason, or say that Trey Lance completely bombs OTAs and training camp, and the 49ers are like, what the hell is going on? Well, then they might start having second thoughts about jettisoning a proven winner, a veteran quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo that they have on their roster. But that's not plan A. And it's much more likely that Trey Lance, I think, takes strides this offseason, that the 49ers see more of what impressed them so much on the scout team last year. I mean, Trey Lance did some electric stuff. I've made a whole 10-part video series breaking down the all 22 of every single one of Trey Lance's snaps from this past season. You can watch it on the channel. Hit subscribe, hit like right now, and go watch the 10-part video series on Trey Lance, and you'll see the tangible progress that he made over the course of his 10 quarters of play, including those first 2 against Seattle when he was really raw. And then you juxtapose that with this offseason of work that's coming up. Phase 2 starts today. It's Monday. And then OTAs start on May 23rd. You look at all the data and you look at how important this next month and month and a half of Trey Lance's NFL career will be. And you make a projection. And my projection is that he's going to make big strides over the course of the next few months. And I think the 49ers are going to be very happy with that. And I think he's going to be the starting quarterback for your 2022 San Francisco 49ers. All right, let's move on to the running back situation. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little bit more. This is the running back room. The thing about zooming in, though, is that I can't fit all the practice squad guys in, but I just made that a little bit wider for you. And I highlighted the running back room, and I'll scroll over to the right. Obviously, the fullback row has more names than it should have because I can't fit everybody into the running back row. But Elijah Mitchell's your top dog. Right now, I have Jeff Wilson as the second running back just because I think he's a veteran that has earned that role. Tyrion Davis-Price is going to make the roster as a third-round pick. And obviously, Trey Sermon's going to be in there. Can it be a better year for Trey Sermon with the fact that the 49ers under Trey Lance will likely run some more inside zone? Yes, and he's also going to be a second-year back. Sometimes that crash course at the NFL level, it's easier for some than it is for others. Elijah Mitchell just happened to perfectly fit everything that the 49ers were looking for in an outside zone running back. I mean, the 49ers research and development team, the R&D unit of the analytics department, they couldn't believe that Elijah Mitchell was available in the 6th round, but it was a perfect fit for the 49ers. But he did get banged up several times. I could count 5 publicly disclosed injuries. And the point is that the 49ers need bodies in that backfield, point blank. It seems that every single season by week 10, the 49ers are down to one running back on one leg, and everybody else is either on IR or unable to play. Kyle Shanahan's system simply utilizes running backs to the, such a great extent, and also picks running backs who are A, fast, and B, a little bit lighter, but he also wants them to be physical. So he wants lighter guys for speed, but he wants them to be physical. So I think that's like kind of a recipe for injuries. So the type of running back that the 49ers acquire at the NFL level is going to get banged up, and the 49ers use them, despite the fact that these guys are getting banged up, they're still using them more than almost any other team in the league because of how run heavy they are. So the bottom line is the 49ers need a stable of these guys to be effective in the offensive backfield. And, that's how you can understand why they used the 3rd round pick on Trey Sermon in 2021 and why they used the 3rd round pick on Tyrion Davis-Price in 2022. They need effective bodies to be able to sustain offensive efficiency at running back. It's as simple as that for the 49ers. Now, with the 3rd round picks, people often say, well, Kyle Shanahan can find a running back anywhere. Kyle Shanahan found Matt Breida. Kyle Shanahan as an undrafted free agent. Kyle Shanahan, I guess I should say Bobby Turner, who wasn't around this year, but Kyle Shanahan and Bobby Turner found Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round. And, you can't use exceptions to argue that there's some kind of rule going on. In fact, it's not easy to replace a Kyle Shanahan running back. If it were easy, the 49ers wouldn't have thrust Deebo Samuel into that role last season. They had to use an all-pro just to get the kind of efficiency they needed at the backfield. So I think that the fact that the 49ers need to often replace their running backs has been confused with the theory that they're very replaceable. People say that 49ers running backs are really replaceable, so you could just get a bunch of undrafted free agents or 6th rounders. It's not the case. They have to be replaced often, but they're not easily replaceable. Jacques Patrick didn't work out last year. Austin Walter, undrafted free agent that was with the 49ers for a bit, that didn't work out. When the 49ers haven't had a plus runner, their offense has struggled. So it's up to the front office to go and find plus runners that work in this system. And that's why they use 3rd round picks on Trey Sermon and Tyrion Davis-Price. Now, you can criticize the actual pick, right? You can criticize, Trey Sermon, maybe he wasn't quite fast enough, even though the 49ers thought he had a good 10-yard burst time. And maybe he still will be good shooting out of that cannon in a 10-yard burst when it's more inside zone oriented. People are saying, okay, maybe Tyrion Davis-Price doesn't have that top end speed that could be good for the 49ers in the outside zone. Okay, fine. Those are fair questions right now. I don't think that they're appropriate criticisms yet. I think you got to keep it at the question portion for now because you have to see these players actually deliver on the football field. What does Tyrion Davis-Price have within the context of Kyle Shanahan's scheme? What does Trey Sermon have within the context of the scheme, especially once Trey Lance is the quarterback? Because I'll tell you what, I think the 49ers are going to be running a whole lot more inside zone with Trey Lance. He's going to be the read option quarterback on some of these downs. They're going to utilize his legs. You want to slash that inside zone with bigger backs who can, absorb contact from heavier defenders. So Trey Sermon, a little bit bigger, right, than Matt Breida. You're talking backs now that are up near 210 pounds instead of 198 to 201. Tyrion Davis-Price played at 230 for LSU last year. Probably he's going to play at 215 to 220 for the 49ers. But, it's still going to be significantly bigger than the outside zone mold that the 49ers had established throughout the first few years of this regime. Elijah Mitchell played last year at around 210, 212. He wants to be up to 215 to better absorb some of the hits that the 49ers will be taking in close quarters. This team is not going to stop running the football, even if Trey Lance takes over at quarterback. And it's important to have a big, robust running back room. So it's, The biggest misconception about running backs is that you only need one or two of them. In the Niners system, you need a lot, maybe even more than four. So you have Mitchell, Wilson, Davis Price, Sermon all making the roster. Right now, I have Jermichael Hasty on the outside looking in, and then they also picked up a undrafted free agent, Cyrus Habibi-Likio. He's on the outside looking in. But remember, practice squad's going to be there for some of these guys, and somebody's going to get hurt at some point. Sorry to say it. So even if you're on the outside looking in right now, some way, somehow, this logjam will find a way to relieve itself. Fullback, that's pretty easy. Kyle Juszczyk, Josh Hokett, and hey, Jason Poe. Have Jason Poe, the undrafted free agent center. The guy says he's a fullback. Maybe if he makes the team as an O-lineman, as a backup O-lineman, if Mack retires or something, 49ers might be able to use some package play for him. Or, hey, practice squad for Jason Poe. And then he could be one of your game day flex-ups, one of your game day activations if you have a little wrinkle on your sleeve and you want to run the 300-pound fullback. I wouldn't rule it out. Kyle Shanahan's been an offensive innovator for a long time. We will move to the receiver position now. So, wide receiver, by the way, those of you just coming into the room, check out this right here. That is the 49ers 53-man depth chart projection on The Athletic. Our first 49ers projected 53 of the year. I just put it in the chat section. Subscribe to The Athletic. Hit like on this YouTube channel. Subscribe here as well. Let's get all of you on board because this is a lot of fun to break down. And we've been doing it throughout the whole draft weekend. We've been doing it for a year. The 1-year anniversary of this YouTube channel was the NFL draft. Remember, I came on here and I predicted Trey Lance. That was like the first video of the YouTube channel way back when. Quality was a lot jankier back then. So I've been happy to be able to invest in a better presentation, if you will, for this season as we move forward. All right, so 49ers 90-man depth chart. We are back to the offense. Wide receivers. The 49ers carry 6. Do they carry 7? Could be either. It's just going to depend on how camp shakes out, but obviously, Deebo Samuel. I'll talk about his contractual situation in other videos. We're not going to waste time on it right now. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod, new pickup, gadget weapon, I think, for this 49ers offense on top of his special teams duties this offseason. And Danny Gray. Danny Gray, one of the 5 most explosive / fastest players in this draft, according to Kyle Shanahan. He's going to be that Travis Benjamin role. He's going to be there to stretch out defenses. Remember when Trey Lance first started last year against Arizona? You saw Travis Benjamin activated for the first time in the 2021 season, and they used him as a field stretcher. I mean, Travis Benjamin only had 1 catch throughout all of last season. He wasn't productive at all. But when Lance played, Shanahan tried to use Travis Benjamin to elongate the defense. Did it work? Well, I mean, Lance saw a gradual uptick in success over his time with the 49ers in the 10 quarters at his rookie season. Against Arizona, I thought it worked schematically, but the 49ers were still way too rusty and way too raw offensively. But the bottom line is that Benjamin just, wasn't good enough to be anything more than a field stretcher. You actually need to be a threat to actually produce on some of these catches downfield for this to be a consistently workable strategy. And I think that in the case of Travis Benjamin, the 49ers just didn't have enough. A player on the tail end of his career, a little too small, a little too, just slight of frame. They need it more. And I think Danny Gray, 3rd-round draft pick, is their attempt at getting more out of that field stretching position. So you look at Danny Gray, he's going to slot in there as your, 4th, 5th wide receiver. He's definitely going to make the team. McLeod's definitely going to make the team as a special teams and gadget weapon at 5'9". So who do you want your 6th receiver to be? Well, if you take a look at it right here, I have Malik Turner and Marcus Johnson on the roster right now. I might remove one of those 2 players. I don't think both of them will make it, but I just didn't update the spreadsheet. So Turner's a 6'2" target, played for the Seahawks, played for the Cowboys. I think since you're a little bit smaller with Ray McLeod and Danny Gray, and don't get me wrong, Danny Gray's not that small. He's about 5'11" to 6 feet. I know SMU's website listed him at 6'2". That's a lie. The guy, he's light on his feet. He's fast. He's a burner, right? He's more physical than you think. he'd be at those measurements and at that speed. But let's stop acting like he's Jawan Jennings or, Deebo Samuel or, one of these, or even Brandon Ayuk, one of these more physical receivers. He's not. He's a burner. Ray McLeod also is a shifty 5'9" weapon. So I'm thinking, with your number 6 spot, you might want some more size again, given the way that the 49ers play football. And I like Malik Turner for that role. 6'2", strong. I mean, the guy is a specimen. He's the type of guy that I can see making the roster because of that size, and he has some veterans pedigree. Other options on the practice squad: Austin Mack, Keyshawn Johnson, shout out to Fresno State, Connor Weddington, shout out to Stanford, and the 2 undrafted free agents are Tay Martin and Taysir Mack. Both of them remind me a bit of Kendrick Bourne, especially Tay Martin. 6'1", it's going to have to add some strength, going to have to add some muscle, going to have to cut down on the drops, but both of those guys are more quick than they are fast, and I see practice squad as their ceiling because they're definitely developmental type of players for the 49ers. All right, tight end. Tight end's the position where the 49ers might add a veteran or two, at least one, over the course of the next couple of months of the offseason, because this is relatively thin compared to the rest of the roster where you see some depth. Kittle, Werner, Dwelly are my 53-man projection right now. Then you have Hudson, Jordan Matthews, and then the undrafted free agent out of North Carolina, Garrett Walston. I mean, none of that moves the needle for me. Walston's kind of just he's solid in all phases of the game, but not great. Runs a 4.7, 4.8, I think. So he's not a burner. George Kittles don't grow on trees. Kittle obviously ran that 4.5 coming out in 2017. Dwelly fell off last season. Werner's stock increased, but the 49ers, Shanahan likes when he has a second tight end that can be a truly legit receiving threat. And if he feels he's not getting that out of Dwelly and Werner, and he doesn't think that Jordan Matthews can block well enough and Tanner Hudson can block well enough, and he doesn't feel that Walston's coming on strongly enough to be a true factor in 2022, well, then the 49ers can sign a veteran at the tight end position. But so far, I have a projection of 3 tight ends. I know in the past, Shanahan's like to take 4. I just don't want to coronate anybody from the right side of that spreadsheet and put them to the left side until they prove something, because the 49ers are too deep to just be inserting players into the 53-man roster for the hell of it at the tight end position. You're taking a spot away from somebody else, so you have to earn a spot on this football team. Use Jason Poe as tight end. All right, that's not a bad thought. Maybe Jason Poe comes in, takes one of those tight end spots, and the Niners have a 300-pounder, and then you're really talking about the Yak brothers. You're really talking about knocking some mouth guards out, dishing out some punishment. On to the offensive line. Left tackle. And by the way, until Alex Mack retires, if he does this offseason, I'm going to consider him in. I just can't. Sometimes I'm caught between a rock and a hard place with these projections, and you're like, what do you do? Well, I think you just have to go with the status quo until it's verified that that's not the case. So making the 53-man roster: left tackle, Trent Williams; left guard, Aaron Banks. It seems the 49ers are leaning toward their second-round pick from last year, slotting into Laken Tomlinson's former spot. Center, Alex Mack; right guard, Daniel Brunskill; right tackle, Mike McGlinchey. Also making the 53-man roster in my initial projection, Colton Mckibbitz. He's got guard tackle versatility. Obviously was the backup left tackle for the 49ers in that Week 17 game or Week 18 game against the Rams last year. Spencer Burford, their 4th-round pick, really impressive 4th-round pick that I think will immediately compete for a starting job. Jake Brendel, backup center, the 49ers are high on. He's a veteran who might replace Alex Mack if that becomes a retirement situation officially. Jalen Moore, he'll be entering his 2nd year. And then Nick Zakel, who's the other rookie, the guy out of Fordham for the 49ers, Nick Zakel. 49ers actually believe he's got some center versatility, but they're looking at him mainly as a guard. On the outside looking in, you have some undrafted free agents: Donovan West, Jason Poe. Again, Jason Poe, maybe his versatility allows him to make the 53-man roster in other ways. You have Sam Schluter, tackle out of Minnesota, on the outside looking in, maybe a developmental practice for the piece of the practice squad. Then you have Keaton Sutherland, Justin School, who I don't think, coming off the ACL, didn't play last year. I don't think he makes the team. And obviously Alfredo Gutierrez, who's your international exception from Mexico, would not count against the 53-man roster, does not currently count against the 90-man roster. So what do you do if you're the 49ers? Well, Brunskill at right guard, I think if Spencer Burford comes along and impresses as much as his tape impresses me. And this guy throwing around people like a rag doll at Texas San Antonio, I think Burford challenges for right guard. And if Burford gets that right guard spot, Brunskill can float. And if Brunskill can float, you've got yourself a better swing tackle than Colton Mckibbitz. And if Colton Mckibbitz is not the best swing tackle on this roster, well, then Colton Mckibbitz might not make the 53. I'm curious to see what happens with Jalen Moore this season. The 49ers obviously didn't go to him in week 18. They went to Mckibbitz instead when Trent Williams wasn't available against the Rams. I want to know if Jalen Moore is going to make a year or two jump, or if the 49ers view Jalen Moore more as a guard. Because if he's more of a guard for the 49ers, then he's going to be in that right guard mix as well. Zakel, I think, is more raw than Burford, so I don't envision Zakel immediately starting for the 49ers. And obviously the big wild card is right here, the guy that I just highlighted in Alex Mack. If he does retire, 49ers will decide between Brendel, Brunskill, or maybe even Donovan West at center, but I don't think a rookie is going to start at that center position. But if Mack does retire, there is another roster spot open for Donovan West or Jason Poe to slide in there. The thing about Jason Poe is I don't think his arms are long enough to be a NFL caliber offensive lineman. He might be depth there, but it's his there's a reason why he put his fullback ability on his little hype tape, is because his versatility is what might earn him a spot at the table at the NFL level. All right, time to drink a little bit of water. Taking the break between offense and defense. Moving to the defensive line for the 49ers. Those of you who just joined, again, I'm going to keep on posting this into the chat section. This is my 53-man roster projection on The Athletic. I would love if you guys went and subscribed to The Athletic. It's always good to get you on board with some of the written material and not just the YouTube videos, because I think you get a little bit more out of that. And I spend a lot of time doing these videos, and my main job is to write these articles. So I base a lot of what I'm talking about on the written breakdowns. And trust me, you're gonna know the 49ers better than you've ever known before if you subscribe for $1 a month or whatever it is, and start getting into some of those written breakdowns. All right, back to the sheet, the 53-man roster projection along with this depth chart. I'm starting to get hungry. It's 11:30, stomach starting to growl, so I'm looking forward to go and get some food here in just a few minutes. Let's take a look at the 49ers defensive line. Now, this is one loaded room. It took, some hard cuts to get the 49ers down to about 10 bodies there. There is a world in which they take 11. I believe they had 11 on the 53-man at some point last season. So if they have to, they'll take 11. But, boy, they're going to face some decisions. Bosa's going to make it. Armstead's going to make it. Kinlaw's going to make it. Ebukam right now I have listed as a starter. I'm going to circle back to that in a little bit, because Ebukam's financial situation and the drafting of Drake Jackson is interesting. Amenahu, Kerry Hyder back from Seattle after a year away from the 49ers. Hassan Ridgeway, former Eagles defensive tackle that they picked up. And Kamoko Toure, former Colts pass rusher that they signed in free agency. Maurice Hurst, maybe he'll be healthier this next year for interior play. And then obviously your number 61 overall pick, Drake Jackson. The reason I have Drake Jackson a little bit lower on the depth chart is because I believe that rookies have to prove themselves. But ultimately the 49ers would want Drake Jackson to, I'll undo this in a second, take this role right here. They'd like him to take Sansom Ebukam's role. Sansom Ebukam has about a $6 million cap hit this season. And the 49ers can save almost all of that money if Sansom Ebukam doesn't make the team. So if the 49ers do have to free up some space, if there's some cap maneuvering that needs to be done, and Drake Jackson really impresses them over the course of training camp, and he's ready to take that role opposite Nick Bosa, Sansom Ebukam, that could be a position where the 49ers either cut him or say, hey, we're going to renegotiate your contract for this season. We don't want that cap hit to be as high. They may have some leverage there. Now, the defensive line is the engine that drives this team. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have been, especially Lynch, have been very, very vocal and clear about this. So all things considered, the 49ers don't mind stockpiling this room with a traffic jam that would put the 405 down in LA to shame. And I know I put the in front of 405. It's because in Southern California, they say the 405, the 10, the 110. So if you're talking about LA freeways, you put the, but never do that if you're in the Bay Area. If you're in San Francisco, San Jose, Palo Alto, Redwood City, wherever, never say that you're taking the 101. You're taking 101. You're taking 280. You're taking 92. You're taking 880, which sucks. That's the worst freeway of all time. You're taking 680. You're taking 580. You're taking the Bay Bridge. Maybe you cross the Golden Gate Bridge, but you're never taking the number of the freeway. That's LA talk, okay? Anyway, traffic jams on the 405 in LA. The 49ers defensive line room looks a lot like that. They have way too many bodies to fit on a 53-man roster. If you look to the right side of the dividing line, I have Jordan Willis and Kevin Gibbons not making the football team. If you go further on, you have Kevin Atkins, who's your undrafted free agent out of Fresno State. And you have Kalia Davis, who I think is going to start the season on PUP. He's a promising player. Made a whole separate video about him yesterday, so like and subscribe to the channel to check that thing out. But it's going to be almost a blessing in disguise for the 49ers to not have to fit him on the initial 53-man roster, because if you take 10, you're not fitting Willis or Gibbons. I know Slayton and Barrett are more practice squad types in the past. They've re-signed with the 49ers. But boy, Willis and Gibbons have been productive football players for the 49ers. And unless there are injuries, and there might be injuries, it's going to be hard to fit everybody onto this defensive line. But that is exactly the way that the 49ers want it. They want this defensive line to be robust. It is the driver of this team. They're not only rush over coverage, they're defensive line over everything else. That's the heartbeat of the football team. And they joke. They tell Chris Kasarik, if you ever complain that we're not giving you enough players, there's going to be a problem. That's what Lynch told Chris Kasarik the other day, because you could see all the players that the 49ers have gotten him. And they spent their most valuable draft pick on Drake Jackson to pair with Bosa. Again, Bosa, Armstead, Kinlaw. It's going to be a big year for Kinlaw. But even if you're, they've insulated themselves a bit in case Kinlaw doesn't pan out by signing Ridgeway, by bringing Kerry Hyder back. Maurice Hurst should be healthier this year. Those are some quality defensive tackles. This is depth on depth on depth in the 49ers defensive line. And to me, it's very, very impressive. All right, on to the linebacker room. Niners are good at linebacker. Fred Warner, all pro. Dre Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shire. Those are three really, really nice pieces at linebacker. They signed Oren Burks, who gives them a little bit more bulk. I mean, the trend at linebacker for the 49ers have been signing, or adding all these former safeties and these DB types. I mean, even Fred Warner was a DB type in college at BYU. He was so good that he created his own position, the star position at BYU, kind of a slot hybrid type guy. And, Warner wasn't part of this issue. Warner's great no matter what. But with Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Marcel Harris, who's no longer in the team, those are both former safeties converted to linebacker. And the 49ers thought that their depth at the position was getting a little bit light. They thought they started to be a little bit vulnerable to more power rushing attacks. So they went out and got Oren Burks, who's going to be a special teams ace from Green Bay, but he's also a linebacker through and through. There's not been any, he's bigger. There's not going to be any confusion about what position this guy plays. Now, Oren Burks, yes, he actually does have some DB background at Vanderbilt, and he could run around and he can tackle. So you want to keep the speed, but it was important for the 49ers to add some size to the room. On the UDFA show yesterday, breaking down the 49ers undrafted free agents, I talked more about Jeremiah Gemmel out of North Carolina and Segun Olubi out of San Diego State. Those are the two UDFA pickups. Olubi runs a 4.4, so Olubi's intriguing to me. Gemmel doesn't run as fast, but they called him the general at UNC. I mean, this guy, he's an impressive leadership kind of figure, and he knows how to play the game the right way. He's just he's a football player, a guy that you like to have on your team. Curtis Robinson, Stanford product, saw a cup of coffee with the 49ers, played some special teams for them last year. He's also on the outside looking in. But who makes the practice squad in the linebacker room is really interesting to me, because that's going to signal who has the early inside track to earn a contract, a 53-man contract next year for the 49ers, replacing either Dre Greenlaw or Azeez Al-Shire or both. because both of those guys are going to be unrestricted free agents in 2023. And it's hard to see the 49ers keeping both of them. And it's possible to see the 49ers not keeping either of them if both of those guys sign for big money somewhere else. So to me, they need to start stocking up on the future at linebacker, and Gemmel and Olubi are the two first cracks at that. And if they can impress this offseason and make the practice squad, they can be on kind of the longer path toward being contributors to the 49ers in the future, maybe in 2023 or somewhere beyond that. All right, secondary. Why don't we go cornerbacks first? Charvarius Ward, that was the big fish of the 49ers offseason. That was their number one graded cornerback in free agency. They really wanted to sign him. They needed the number one corner. They got the number one corner. And they're going to have him, and they're going to have Emmanuel Moseley obviously make this roster. Ambry Thomas, hoping for a big second-year jump. I mean, he made a jump within his first year, but now he's had a whole offseason, or he will have had a whole offseason to work in an NFL strength and conditioning program, which I think was the key for Ambry. Yes, I have Dante Johnson making the roster. Dante Johnson was a hero for the 49ers last year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. One intriguing thing about Dante is that he could play nickel. He played safety for the 49ers on 17 snaps against the Rams in Week 18, and he did a good job. And then obviously the heroic part came against Green Bay, essentially shutting down Devontae Adams in that game. I mean, that was a hell of a performance from Dante Johnson in the divisional playoffs on the road against the Packers. And his Swiss Army knife versatility, his dependability is second to none. He's not going to start for you for the whole season, and you don't want him starting for you for the whole season, but you want him on the roster. And it's going to be really hard for Deommodore Lenoir, Kadar Holman, Darquez Dennard, guys like that to justify making the roster over Dante Johnson. I'm just putting it point blank. You have to be a good football player to supersede the versatility and the Swiss Army knife adaptability that saved the 49ers asses last year from Dante Johnson. So maybe they carry 7 defensive backs, 7 cornerbacks, and Lenoir is on the team. Fine, that's possible, right? But I'm just saying that somebody's going to have to really impress the 49ers to supersede Dante Johnson on that roster. And he's a popular punching bag on social media. But all those people were proven wrong last season because Dante saved the 49ers. He had the game-winning pass breakup against the Texans. Then he turned around and played indispensable snaps at multiple positions in a must-win game against the Rams in Week 18 and did a good job. And then he came in and, the icing on the cake was that performance starting at cornerback against the Green Bay Packers, and the 49ers obviously won at Lambeau. But anyway, I digress. Samuel Womack, draft pick, is going to make this team nickel cornerback. In an ideal world, Womack impresses early and often, and he takes this spot right here. Takes that slot cornerback spot, because that would allow Emmanuel Moseley to be the full-time right cornerback with no shifting on pass downs necessary. And then that would allow Ambry Thomas to be depth that could rotate in and dime package situations. And it would be a dream scenario for the 49ers if Samuel Womack was able to immediately replace K'Wan Williams. But I don't think that I can assume that yet, because the guy's a rookie, even though this is the fun fact about Samuel Womack. He's got 5'9" height, so he's got the agility, quickness. He's short enough to be a good nickel, to be able to be shifty enough to keep up with those slot receivers. But his arms, 32-inch arms, 31 7/8 inches. His arms are essentially as long as Richard Sherman. So Womack, I think on paper, could be the guy for the 49ers at slot, and they're certainly hoping that after they drafted him this past weekend. And then Tariq Castro-Fields has all the measurements, 4'4", 40, 6'1", 200 pounds. Did a lot of good stuff at Penn State. The coaching staff at Penn State raved about this guy, Tariq Castro-Fields, about his ability to, he's just smart. And I asked him who he's modeled his game after. He said Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman's the guy, he loves his intelligence on the field. And Castro-Fields in that interview came across really well. He was inconsistent at Penn State, but the physical tools are there. And he's obviously got the mental tools. So if the 49ers can find a way to package that all together for their 6th round pick, Castro-Fields, he can start threatening for real playing time. And it's, the goal at defensive back, at cornerback specifically for the 49ers, was to create as much competition as possible, make it a little bit uncomfortable, because in years past, it hadn't been all that uncomfortable in the defensive backfield. If you're a rookie, you'd easily make the team. This season, it's going to be a little uncomfortable, and that was the 49ers' goal in the defensive backfield. All right, safety position. People wondering why the 49ers didn't draft one of these guys? Well, it's because they're really confident in Jimmy Ward, Tarvarius Moore, Talanoa Hufanga, and George Odom. Odom especially is a free agent pickup this year from Indianapolis. He didn't miss a single tackle in the box last season. Had some good reps in pass coverage. He just was a special teams ace who didn't start consistently at the defensive backfield. And at safety, sorry, I should specifically mention the position. Maybe he's just a guy who needs the opportunity, and that might be what the 49ers are counting on. Now, they did bring in 3 undrafted free agents. Quantrez Knight out of UCLA, Taylor Hawkins out of San Diego State, Leon O'Neal out of Texas A&M. O'Neal, a little bit on the slower side, 4.7 40. Quantrez Knight didn't run all too well either, 4.6. Taylor Hawkins, former cornerback in college, 4.5. He's the fastest of the 3 as far as actual 40 time goes. He's going to be moving to safety, you would assume, with the 49ers, so I have him there. But Quantrez Knight is interesting to me because I think his versatility might punch him a roster ticket for the 49ers. He could be kind of that joker on the back end. He could deliver some big nickel snaps. He's bigger built than Samuel Womack. Can he play on the outside? Probably not at 4.6 speed, but we'll have to see how he plays at an NFL level. Sometimes 40 times don't mean everything. And, the physicality does excite me with Quantrez Knight. And I think that's just, we talk about competition at the 49ers cornerback position. I think they did bring in 3 UDFAs who could deliver competition at the safety position. And we still can't rule out a re-signing of Jaquiski Tartt. Rounding out the 53-man roster, Tabor Pepper, Robbie Gould, and Mitch Wishnowsky. The 49ers kicking battery remains unchanged. So there you have it. 49ers 53-man roster. It's right here. Go to the chat section. Check out the article on The Athletic. Sign up right now for that. I went through all of it. I had to make some tough cuts. I don't know if they're going to carry 6 or 7 receivers, 10 or 11 defensive linemen, 9 or 10 offensive linemen, 6 or 7 cornerbacks. I mean, these are all decisions that the 49ers will have to make over the course of the next several months, and they'll make that decision finally in September. They're probably going to gather all the data before it comes in, but it took a good 42 minutes to go over that roster, and that's because the 49ers are really deep at the margins, and that's a good thing for any football team. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm hungry as hell. This is not a Q&A session. I'll do another Q&A session at some point a little bit later. Thank you, everybody, for following along. Subscribe to The Athletic through that 53-man roster. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button. Hope you enjoyed our first look at roster construction. There's a whole lot more where that came from over the next few months. Everybody have a great lunch and a wonderful Monday. Take care.